Porn is our apocalypse. This was our cataclysm as millennials, and it's such a massive evil. The people that own all of these things, the people that own OnlyFans, the people that own, Pornhub, all of this stuff, should be in prison. In any normal society that cared about their youth, these people would be in prison and this stuff would be banned. But it's not. And in the modern view of what freedom is, and freedom of speech and all of this, you have people that champion pornography and they're just like, this is the ultimate expression and it's my right to do that. No, it's not. It's not your right to destroy the innocence of children. And we're going to have these conversations really soon if we're going to survive as a society. And that's something that I'm personally deeply concerned about. Hello, my friends. God bless you. Welcome back to Traveler of the Wood, and welcome to our first cold morning here in the Midwest. I have a pretty dark subject that I want to talk about today. If you've been following some of my recent videos, you might have noticed a common theme, and that theme is each generation's, I guess you could say, trauma that has altered their trajectory, leading them into the future. I've spoken quite a bit about boomers, and I have plenty more thoughts that I want to share about boomers, but that's going to be for a different video, because for this video, I want to talk about millennials and some of the problems that we face as millennials. A couple reasons for this. One being me being an older millennial. I feel like I have a decent overview of a lot of our problems that we face. But also, just while I was driving back up here to Missouri, I started to connect some dots that I think are really important, and that's what I'm wanting to share with you. So this is pretty complicated, and it's going to take me a while to work through all this, so please forgive me. In my observation, millennials have been, in some cases willingly and in some cases unwillingly, participating in a very large-scale sex magic ritual. This type of sex magic spellcasting is a very large net that is kind of almost solely over the millennial generation, and has been for some time. But when you start talking about sex magic and all of this stuff, people kind of want to write this off. But I highly advise that you pay attention to it, because it's a major source of all of our problems. Oftentimes we hear millennials, talking about their struggles and suggesting, oh, well, I lived through, 9/11 and recessions and housing crises and all of this stuff, which all of this is trauma. It is part of our generational trauma. But the biggest aspect of our generational trauma comes to us as pornography. And it isn't as black and white as, oh, we just all of a sudden had access to massive amounts of pornography and that destroyed us. That's a part of it, but that's not the full story. So millennials are the most sexually charged generation. We were kind of primed to be that. And this is the thing about sex. Sex is sacred. It's holy. It's pure. It's meant to not only procreate, but this is like the ultimate act of union and love with another person. And if you're watching this channel, you probably already know, but when evil is around, evil takes these things and inverts it and makes it into something impure, demonic, evil, essentially. So on the very first layer of this, now I promise all of this is going to tie in, so bear with me for a second. I've mentioned this before in other videos, but when we reach an era of instability, it's common for people to look back to the past to find an area of stability. For most generations, they look back to an era of societal stability, and that's kind of where they put their focus when they're trying to repair problems. But millennials are a little bit different because we are so individualistic and in some cases even selfish. We look back to personal stability. So we're not looking too far back into the past to find this stability. Most of us, when we do this, we look back to our childhood. Now, I'm not saying every millennial had a great childhood, but I'm saying on average, that is where millennials feel the most comfortable and the most stable. They have this sense of stability from their childhood. This is a dangerous place to be in when it comes to dark forces and dark magic being cast on us. Because we all tend to have an interest in nostalgia. This can be seen very clearly on the internet. You know, they have these nostalgia edits and stuff, and a lot of this is like VHS era edits of, you know, people walking around a shopping mall in 1995 at Christmas time, or graduating high school in 98. You know, all of these kind of things people really like to watch and consume. That's a key word, by the way, consume. Nostalgia, what I'm getting at is nostalgia has become commodified. And this opened a door for a very interesting side effect, which is millennials starting to make nostalgia commodities a huge part of their life. What do I mean by that? I mean, you have people who are, on average, millennials, buying toys in mass, having toy collections, getting really interested in Legos or Funko Pops or, you know, all of this stuff. And I don't want to sound like a boomer here, but this is, you know, a common thing that I've heard. It's almost a meme now, you know, where, you know, the boomer is saying to the millennial, well, if you quit buying avocado toast, you'd have money to buy a house and invest. Obviously, the money's situation's way more messed up than that. But it's not avocado toast that people are buying. It's toys. It's making this nostalgia commodity such a deep part of their life that it's actually triggering within them a type of age regression. Now, this is where things get really weird, because as people participate in this age regression, there's something inherently sexual about it. And whether you are knowledgeable of that fact or not, it still has this kind of sexual undertone behind it, which adds potency to any sort of sex magic ritual. That's a very surface level example. A slightly deeper example are people, millennials, who are making cartoons a part of their life. And an example I'm going to use here is My Little Pony, because I've seen very recently, as well as in the past, middle-aged men who are into My Little Pony. They're into My Little Pony without having children or a wife. And obviously this is creepy, and obviously this is a huge problem. But it's all part of this age regression thing. Now, growing up, I was exposed to a lot of people in assorted fandoms, as they say. I used to photograph anime conventions, and was a big fan of anime back when I was younger. But in those communities, I did encounter people who were into My Little Pony, and 98% of them that I encountered were men, childless men. I'm not saying everybody, but on average, these men were A, homosexual, B, furries, and C, in some extreme cases, got caught up into some things and essentially became a pedophile. This is what I mean when there is sexual undertones to all of this stuff. There is a thing called Rule 34. If you're blessed enough to not have participated in the internet all this time, you don't know what that is. But just as a refresher, for those of you who might have forgotten, Rule 34 suggests that if you can think about it, there is porn of it on the internet. A lot of these nostalgic mediums, My Little Pony, anime, toys, whatever, have corresponding pornography on the internet. there is a large percentage of people that participate in both of those worlds. They have the toys, they have the DVDs of the cartoons or whatever. They also participate in the pornography of it and the desire to place themselves in these universes. You know, people that are into My Little Pony have art done. They commission artwork of themselves as a pony in this universe. And I know this is all sounding really, really strange, but this is something that happens. And if you're lucky enough to not have ever been exposed to this, you're blissfully unaware of it. But it's a bigger issue than you think. And I'm not suggesting everyone that collects toys is into all of this weird stuff, but a lot of times they are. And even if they don't think they are, they're participating in an age regression kink. And this is super disturbing for many reasons, but the main one being that it's part of the Peter Pan complex. It's part of the not wanting to grow up and face adult problems. And, you know, millennials on average have a lot of trouble dealing with adult problems. But why is that? Well, the world does kind of suck right now. There's a lot of problems that millennials are uniquely facing that no other generation has had to face. And that's having all of these side effects. But my whole theme of this video is getting at the sex magicians that are orchestrating a lot of this spellcasting knows this, and they're preying on this. And sexuality for most people, but especially men, that is the beast inside of yourself. That is the thing that can be drawn out and can commit the most atrocious and the most evil. You know, so magisters are aware of this, and that's why they're preying on this so much. So briefly, I want to talk about our exposure to pornography because I think this is really important. Most millennials that I know were exposed to pornography as children, young children, not even older children. In my personal life, I remember being like maybe, I don't know, 9 or 10 years old and seeing the nude female body for the first time in a photography book, actually. Fast forward a few years to like being in 6th grade or so. In 6th grade, and keep in mind this was at a Christian school, among my peers, I was exposed to pornography in magazine form. I was exposed to drugs, alcohol, tobacco, all of this in about 6th grade. And many millennials have very similar stories. But with the internet, boomers didn't really realize how quickly millennials would adapt to the internet. Having a personal computer at home was something that was there pretty much my entire life because my parents used the internet for their work early on. So at least as far as I can remember, there was a computer in the house, and as soon as the internet was a thing, I remember having access to it. But for those of you that maybe weren't alive during that era, the internet was the Wild West. Like, it didn't matter what you typed in the search engine, you would just be exposed to pornography pretty quickly if you weren't being really careful. This has happened to so many millennials, and you have a lot of millennial men who got very addicted to pornography for a very, very long time. We're talking like a decade or more. And all of this sexual energy was channeled into this blanket spell that I'm talking about, instead of finding love, doing the holy act of procreation, all of this kind of stuff. So porn is our apocalypse. This was our cataclysm as millennials, and it's such a massive evil. The people that own all of these things, the people that own OnlyFans, the people that own, Pornhub, all of this stuff, should be in prison. In any normal society that cared about their youth, these people would be in prison and this stuff would be banned. But it's not. And in the modern view of what freedom is, and freedom of speech and all of this. You have people that champion pornography, and they're just like, this is the ultimate expression and it's my right to do that. No, it's not. It's not your right to destroy the innocence of children. And we're going to have these conversations really soon if we're going to survive as a society. And that's something that I'm personally deeply concerned about. So, like I said toward the beginning of this video, we all have things we need to work on. But the thing that millennials really, really need to work on is calling this stuff out when they see it. If you know someone who is helplessly addicted to pornography, you have to get them help. You have to, if you love them and care about them, you have to inform them that they're participating in evil that is way larger than they can comprehend. And they've got to get out of it. They've got to get help. Because what's porn going to do to you? You're going to watch porn until you get bored. And then you're going to need more extreme stuff to get off. And then you're going to need even more extreme stuff than that to get off. Next thing you know, you're going to be changing your sexuality around entirely. In some cases, some of these people that are addicted to porn become transgender, or they become homosexual, or they become pedophiles. You know, all of this stuff is tied into it. And it's such a dark and evil thing. And this is the apocalypse for millennials, is pornography. And people need to realize that yesterday, not in the future. So, to tie all this up, I know you hear me mention stuff on the channel that sounds kind of woo-woo sometimes. You hear me mention sex magic and all of this stuff. This is a real thing. This is demonic. This is something that is so sinister and evil that it sounds fake. It doesn't sound real that sex magic is real, but it is real. And these things are harming us in untold numbers of ways. And we're all participating in it in some way or the other. If we use the internet, we're participating in it. What we need is a thorough rejection of the impurity of this modern internet culture. So there's definitely going to be a part 2 to this video at some point. I don't know when I'm going to make that, but these are just some thoughts I've been thinking about. And yeah, this is very important. So thank you all so much for listening to this. If you like my commentary, or if you find it at all interesting, I would really appreciate a subscription. If you would subscribe to the channel and like the video and share it with your friends and family that you feel might need it. I really appreciate all of you, as I always say, and I hope God blesses you today, and have a wonderful day.